What's going on, guys? So in front of me, you're looking at a vital component to RVs. This is the power converter. This component is used to convert 120 volt AC power, basically when your RV is plugged into shore power, into 12 volt DC power that's designed to charge the house batteries. Now, how does this work? Let's talk about it. Hang tight, I'll be right back. Alright, so a few weeks ago I did a video talking about the electrical systems in RVs and essentially how they're ran. I even showed a cool little diagram of where power is kind of designed to support in different aspects of an RV, whether you have solar power, whether you're connected to shore power, or whether you're operating from a generator. Now, whenever you have your RV plugged into shore power, you're going to be utilizing a power converter, which is this component right here, to charge the 12 volt battery that's inside of your RV. Typically, it's greater than that, like 13.6 volt battery. That said, whenever you get a battery upgrade or you switch from a standard lead acid battery to a lithium iron phosphate battery, you have to be sure that you upgrade your power converter if it's required to be able to support lithium iron phosphate or lithium technology. Now, out of all of these, two of them claim to support lithium. One of them doesn't do a very good job of it, and the other one does an excellent job of it. So can you guess which one it is? Okay, so what you're looking at here can get kind of confusing. There are so many folks who have a power converter that eventually fails in their RV. So they start scouring the internet, looking on Amazon and different places to find a replacement converter. In the process of doing that, sometimes it makes more sense just to go ahead and upgrade to one that can support a battery upgrade as well, such as lithium iron phosphate. However, you have to be very, very careful because a lot of really reputable brands, high-quality brands, get knocked off by foreign copies, and this is a perfect example of it. So, on the left here, you see we have the WFCO 55 amp power converter. This is the WF9855. This is probably one of the most popular power converters that you're going to see in RVs. There's a newer version of this that is designed to do auto sensing, where it will switch between standard chemistry of lead acid to lithium chemistry, but this is not that one. That's why I have it out here. We actually removed this from one of the RVs. So, the WFCO brand is a very reputable brand, and it's not an inexpensive brand. If you look for an actual WFCO power converter, this product number with that branding on it, you're going to see these things typically go for about $200, maybe even a little bit more than that. Until you start looking on Amazon and you see this bad boy right here, which actually has a very similar model number to it, the WF9855. WF9855. But you're not going to see the WFCO logo on it, and it's going to be missing some stickers and missing some labeling because this is a generic knockoff. This is made to look very similar. It's not exact, and you can actually tell some of the differences when you look at the orientation of things, when you look at how the terminals are set up. Things look a little bit different. You look at the fuses, the vent holes, all of this, but it is a very, very close copy to the WFCO. Except from a quality perspective. That's where things really start to drop down. So a lot of folks who have upgraded to this one, because it claims to be lithium compatible, and that's actually why I bought this one, so you guys could see, has an output of 13.6, and it's supposed to be auto sensing. But upon testing this, this has not gone higher than 13.6 volts, which means it's not going to be suitable for lithium chemistry. That said, this right here is about 80 bucks. Versus 200 or more. And that's the key here. Just because something looks similar does not mean it's the same thing. Actually, when I was looking at some of the comments on Amazon and in forums, people were like, hey, I bought that WFCO junk on Amazon and it didn't work. They claimed it would do this, but it didn't. And then you find out that it's not actually the WFCO brand, it's a generic knockoff. A lot of RV manufacturers actually pick reputable brands in their RVs, mainly because they don't want to deal with the risk that something is made to such low standards that it could lead to other problems. So if you see the WFCO brand, that is actually a very reputable brand in the RV world. It is. It's very, very well recognized as a quality brand manufacturer. But there's a lot of companies who produce knockoff versions of this product, and you just have to be aware of what you're looking at. Another big difference here is if you actually look at the certifications on here. This is FCC and UL listed, whereas you're not going to see any of those markings on here. And honestly, even if I saw those markings on here, I don't know if I would believe it. At the price point you buy this at, a lot of people are willing to take that risk. But even if you look at the cord size, the cord is significantly smaller in terms of diameter when it's supposed to be able to support the same amount of power output. So just keep that in mind. This specific one right here is not lithium compatible. However, you can get this one in a lithium compatible version. Nice, small, compact form factor to it. This right here, they have all sorts of different versions of this on Amazon. Tons and tons of them. And for the most part, they get reasonable reviews. But again, most people who are getting this are probably putting it into some type of a project, or they're upgrading one that might have failed on them and they're trying to get a low-cost alternative. And for the most part, as long as this is providing 13.6 volts output to be able to charge a battery, I don't think you're going to have too many issues until perhaps a cheap component inside of here might fail. Now, next to it, on the left here, you have an 80 amp power converter from the folks over at Furrion. This is also an auto sensing converter. This one's really cool because unlike some of the other ones on the market, you don't have to drain your batteries completely dead for this to switch to the correct chemistry. Apparently, according to their instructions, this will auto-detect the chemistry of your battery and charge it at the appropriate voltage level, which is really cool. Now, the challenge you need to be very, very aware of is more power isn't always better. Or if it is better, you need to be aware of what other changes need to be made as well. So if you go to the 80 amp version of this Furrion power converter, let me slide this around here. You can see you got 4 fuses on the end of it. You have your 12 volt in, ground, and then you also have the connection so you can see a monitor, which I didn't have. I put this piece of electrical tape right here specifically because whenever you're tightening a connection here, if there is a hot lead and your screwdriver accidentally touches the chassis of this power converter, it can make a spark. So I just put that there to protect that just in the event that might happen. But one of the reasons why you have to be careful whenever upgrading to a higher amperage power converter is because it may require you to move from your standard 15 amp 120 volt plug right here to a 20 amp plug like this. So typically it's going to look very similar to a normal wall outlet, except one of your vertical prongs will have a horizontal slot cut into it as well. And most power stations on RVs, which is where all your fuses and breakers are, and what this typically plugs into the back of, will be able to support this type of connector. So most of them have that already in place on the back of the power board. But what they may not have is the appropriate breaker in place. In most cases, you're going to have a 15 amp breaker supporting your power converter. And if you don't have a 15 amp breaker and you have a 20 amp breaker, then you are ready to go with something like this. But if you have a 15 amp breaker and you plug this in, you run the risk that the power pull from this could cause you to trip that breaker or weaken that breaker over time. And it just makes sense, if you're going to upgrade to something like this and your breaker board supports it, to go ahead and upgrade to a 20 amp breaker. Otherwise, you really don't need an 80 amp power converter unless you just have a massive power bank in your RV and you need to be able to charge a huge power bank from shore power at a little higher rate, a little higher current. Otherwise, in most cases, these are going to work perfectly fine for you, 55 or 60 amps. There are several other brands that are considered to kind of be best in class, and I plan on reviewing some of those. Actually, I had a whole video on this one installing it, but the video got corrupted and I was not able to recover it. But this specific one was a really, really simple install, other than the fact that it does take up a much larger footprint where I was trying to install it. And I ended up replacing this one with a Progressive Dynamics power converter from eTrailer, which is super, super nice because you can select the chemistry on it versus it auto-detecting. I always prefer when you can select. And it's a 60 amp charger and it uses a 120 volt connection, 15 amp. So it is a really, really great upgrade, probably one of the best component brand and quality upgrades you can put in if you plan on upgrading the power converting system in your RV to support lithium iron phosphate technology. It's not super inexpensive, so you are going to pay more than you would pay even for a WFCO or this Furrion. It's going to be in the $250 to $350 range, but this is one of those components that it does make sense to spend the extra money, and I will have a full install video on that. In the meantime, I just wanted to show you what these are. Again, the sole purpose of these are to charge the batteries in your RV. Now, there are some aspects to it where this can actually provide power to other components in your RV when you are on shore power, but that's only because the power going to your battery from your converter is also going to go to a distribution block, which goes to the 12-volt section of your power station. So your power station is going to get power regardless from shore power, and it's going to convert regardless, but these are typically, again, these are used to be able to support charging of your house battery. And don't get caught up on something that looks the same but is much, much cheaper, and you might automatically think, well, because it looks the same, it's obviously the same brand. No, WFCO is a very reputable brand. The stuff that people are buying on Amazon, I have absolutely no idea the quality of it, no idea why it's so cheap, but it's usually less than half the price of the actual brand that they're trying to copy. And then you can always upgrade to a much higher end one. They also have this in a 60 amp version as well, with a standard 15 amp 120 volt plug on it also. Anyways, I will put a link in the description to this one as well as the Progressive Dynamics. And again, just be sure that you are purchasing the one that supports the technology of the battery it will be charging. If it's a lithium battery, you need to actually get one that supports lithium. If it's not lithium and you're only ever going to use lead acid or deep cycle batteries, then it doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference. Just get a quality power converter and you won't regret it later, hopefully. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.